1960s, Jen Senko's dad never had a bad word to say about any race or people or person.
Then in the 80s, after my dad discovered talk radio during a long commute to work, he suddenly didn't like black people, poor people, gay people, feminists, Hispanics, and especially Democrats. After he discovered Fox News, they became the enemy.
What happened to Dad?
The great story here for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it is this vast right-wing conspiracy, but it has not yet been fully revealed to the American public.
By the 70s and the 80s, the media had been taken over by the extreme right.
Homosexual marriage is such a threat to civilization itself.
Fox News came along.
Mass murder committed by immigrants.
God controls the climate. Come on!
In asking the question, what happened to her dad, it was really like asking what happened to our media. And in asking what happened to our media, it was really like asking what happened to our country.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the trailer to a documentary that has been very cleverly and masterfully directed and produced by Jen Senko. Jen has done this incredible documentary entitled The Brainwashing of My Dad. I've placed a link, by the way, to their website on both the Facebook pages and tweeted it out just a moment ago. But I want to read to you before I bring Jen on the show very quickly on the homepage. It says the following: as filmmaker, Jen Senko tries to understand the transformation of her father from a non-political lifelong Democrat to an angry right-wing fanatic. She uncovers the forces behind the media that changed him completely, a plan by Roger Ailes under Nixon for a media takeover by the GOP, the Powell memo urging business leaders to influence institutions of public opinion, especially the universities, the media, and the courts, and under Reagan, the dismantling of the fairness doctrine. That is just the foundation to what is become an addiction for me. I've watched the documentary now 3 times. Jen Senko, I can't thank you enough for being with us this morning, and I appreciate your time as we begin to explore what I think is an essential conversation, Jen.
Well, Tony, thank you for what you do, too. I got to listen to a little bit of what you do, and I think it's wonderful. So thank you as well, and thank you for having me on.
Well, I have to tell you that the first time I said this earlier on the show, I have not seen a complete a finished cut, and I don't know if you're done with the cut yet. I think you're still doing some editing, Jen, but I've watched the rough cut of The Brainwashing of My Dad 3 times now. The last time from 4 to 5:30 this morning, and I can't get it. I can't get enough of it. I'm telling you that it is the foundation for a new dialogue. I think it's time, Jen, that this movie becomes required watching for anybody. And I mean anybody. I don't care what your political stripe is, that really wants to, if they really want, and you actually make the point in the film quite eloquently, some people don't want the truth.
Right. As Jack Nicholson said, they can't handle the truth.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, that brings a brainwashing, really. Once you get really embedded in your beliefs, it's hard to accept something new. And if all you're watching or listening to all the time is one thing, especially if you're in isolation, then that's going to influence you. And it's very uncomfortable to accept a new belief. And then on top of that, these beliefs that are being put out to them, like it's nothing is your fault, and it may not be, but there are people to blame, there are others to blame. It's a big distraction. So rather than blaming those that are really at fault, the huge overstuffed corporations and aspects of the government, we're fighting amongst ourselves, blaming each other, blaming. It's like a pecking order, blaming everybody less fortunate than the other because they're the takers, and it's a very good strategy.
Well, without wanting to give away too much, I do have to tell you that the way this movie documentary begins and the way it ends is perfect. And I'm just going to leave it there because I can't say anything without ruining it. But this documentary is called The Brainwashing of My Dad for a very profound and personal reason. So, Jen Senko, if you don't mind, can you share with us what happened? Because in fact, I know you're not alone.
Right. And that, by the way, that is what I found out while I was making this film. Well, first of all, I kind of saw it coming, the writing on the wall. And I think, the rest of my family didn't take it so seriously, but I was kind of worried. My dad had a long commute to work, and he didn't want to be bored or alone. When he lived where he lived before, he had a carpool and all the guys talked and whatever. So he listened he turned on talk radio, and the king of talk radio at that time was Bob Grant. And he was, openly racist, sexist. He was bombastic. He got people fired up. There's a big history behind him. And so I started to see those signs. I started to get concerned. I think, like I said, my mom didn't take it too seriously, but it worried me. And then, I saw him change, and there were certain things that happened where he would get very, very, very angry if I expressed a different opinion. I'm thinking like, well, I want people to see the movie too, so I don't want to say too much, but I just started watching it, and I started paying attention to it, and then eventually it's like he became a different person. He was evangelical about it. The emails came in. The emails are also a really important factor, by the way. There are all these emails that are spun to look like they come from a real person, but they're not, and they get people really angry. Like, for instance, the emails that were going around about the McDonald's suit, right? How to get everybody mad at trial lawyers. Well, I saw a documentary on that, and the woman turned out to have had 5 skin grafts and was severely burned, but none of those emails mentioned it. I mean, I used to work in an office, and I would get these emails. Some of the emails would be the same ones from my father, but you couldn't argue with him because he would get so mad. He would curse, and he would curse at my mother, and my mother was the only one that would really kind of sometimes write him back. Sometimes we would try, but eventually I blocked him because it upset me too much, and so did other members of the family. The change was dramatic and frightening, and it felt like an alien overtook his body, and that's why I named it The Brainwashing of My Dad, because that's what it felt like to me. And then I found out that's what it feels like to a lot of these people. I started a Kickstarter campaign, and people just started coming out of the woodwork, and like, I am like the Ann Landers of what happened to your dad or your mom or your people write me, and it's really sad, and it's divided families, and I believe it's divided our nation. Media is very powerful.
It is very powerful. And, I'm mindful of that on a daily basis. Over the course of my 22 years as a talk radio show host, I remind myself on a daily basis, Jen Senko. In fact, and I'll admit this freely, before I get on the air every day, I say a prayer. asking God to illuminate a path so that I can at least help one person every day. My goal is to just help one person every day. If it's 10 people, it's great. If it's 1,000 people, it's wonderful. But I want to reach that one. But I want to reach them in the right way, Jen. And as I'm watching this documentary, The Brainwashing of My Dad, and you certainly, and of course, Rush Limbaugh has to be a part of that discussion. Michael Savage is a part of that discussion. You know, there are others that, pardon me?
Mark Levin, certainly Bob Grant, although you don't mention Glenn Beck by name, he would be a part of that conversation. You know, Jen, as we stop and think, and as you lay this out so perfectly, and I was so glad that you had a chance to talk with my friend Tom Hartman, who is, to me, the quintessential radio talk show host. He's intelligent, he's fair, he is unafraid, he's everything you would really want someone to be. And yeah, so he and I align politically. Listen, this goes back to, Jen, a lot of my philosophy on life. I don't mind losing an argument if it's a fair fight. I don't mind losing an election. I've been a candidate a couple times if it's a fair fight. It's when it's not fair that it's a problem. And the right-wing media and Hillary Clinton's vast right-wing conspiracy, of course, was fodder for the right-wing media. But she happened to be right. There was a vast right-wing conspiracy. And this goes back many years. And in fact, I relish the history lesson that you give us on how we ended up with Fox News and how critical Roger Ailes, and, you know, again, I've preached this many times, but how critical he has been to redefining what we call media. Because what we call media today, Jen Senko, really is not media at all. No, it's propaganda. Plain and simple.
It is propaganda. Let me just go back to Dad for a moment. You know, at the very beginning of the documentary and in the trailer, you know, there's a little bit of this. He was a very kind, loving guy. I think you said he was a non-political Kennedy Democrat. There were lots of them back then. And in fact, there are still a lot of people in this country today that vote either Republican or Democrat based on the way they were raised. Many of them, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, many of them are not politically active at all. They believe that they belong to a certain political party. They vote that party, and then they move on with their lives. And that's fine, Jen. That's fine. But it's, you know, it's that, unfortunately, we look at your dad, who is obviously, you look at the guy, and he's such a sweetheart. I mean, he really is. He's such a sweetheart. And that's why I said the end of the movie is just perfect. And I'm going to leave it there because I just don't want to ruin it. But I'm just, you know, when you see somebody transform, and in fact, you may have been the first one in your family that saw this transition happening, but others felt it as well, including Mom.
What's that?
I said others in your family felt it as well, including Mom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, eventually the whole family did. My older brother felt like it was pulling our family apart at the seams, because that's all that my dad was interested in at the time. Like I said, you know, he was evangelical about it. He couldn't not bring it up in a conversation. You know, one of the first things he tried to find out about people was, you know, what party they were from, what point of view they had. You know, it just became difficult to be with him because that was all it was about.
Well, and you talk about others, and in fact, let me find it here real quick. There is a gentleman, I think his name was Russell. It was the personal story, and let me find that piece of audio very quickly because I think that it's important. Let's listen to this, and we'll come back and talk, Jen.
Sure.
My mother was a normal, middle-class Eisenhower Republican for most of her life. She began listening to Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly on Fox News in the 1990s, and her comments became more and more vicious kind of comments, personal daggers, and that part of it began to dominate rather than the issues. And it was becoming more like the Democrats were not just wrong on issues, but they were bad, they're evil, and she would, express hatred if she saw Clinton on the TV, or oh, I hate that man, or I hate this one, and she would come out with things that I would say, this has been ratcheted up, she never would come out with those things, before. It was just harder edged. It was more absolute. It was as if the world is divided between the good people and the bad people, and they are the bad people. And it's not just a matter of a disagreement politically.
Well, and
Wow, was that from the YouTube channel?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's really well said. You said it better than I could say it myself.
Yeah, that is, and you have, by the way, an exceptional YouTube channel. In fact, I had to pull myself away from it to do the show this morning. I thought it was interesting, and one of the things, and of course, I've experienced this over the course of my career. As you can imagine, I've received death threats. I have received very pointed and very personal derogatory statements directed at me and my family because of my views. This gentleman, Russell, is talking about his mother, who was a gentle Republican, was throwing daggers. I mean, the word he used was daggers. Think about that for a moment. Yeah. And I think that, you experienced some of that with your father. I have found, Jen, and I don't know that this is necessarily true, and maybe I'm overgeneralizing, but it seems to me that the older demographic of people that listen to the Rush Limbaughs and the Glenn Becks and the Bill O'Reillys of the world and watch Fox News, those that are 50 plus are absolutely positively defending their choices of what they watch, who they watch, why they watch it, and the hell with the truth. The message resonates with them. There's something about the anger. And in fact, in the documentary, you talk about the theater of quote unquote news, how angry people get, the Sean Hannitys and Bill O'Reillys again, using and waving your arms. I mean, all of this is part of a master plan. And this is not a conspiracy theory, Jen Senko, not in the least.
Mm-mm. No, it's not. It's a phenomenon, actually. I mean, you were talking about Republicans. Now, I remember growing up, and Republicans were just your next door neighbor and their neighbors, and there wasn't this big feeling of like, you're my enemy. There wasn't this division, and a cousin of mine is a Republican, like you said, that's how she grew up, that's how she votes, but she doesn't watch Fox News or listen to these stations, and she in fact one time voted for Obama, and she's open, and I'm not saying that is what makes her a good person, but there's no animosity there. There's not that. There's no daggers. There's no, oh my God, you're the enemy, which is what it really feels like. I mean, I remember meeting someone recently, and she said to me, this was a woman we were interviewing for my family to do some help, and she said, she just brought up politics right away. She said, in the last few years I've gotten very political. I've become a Republican, and I said, well, I bet I know what you watch. And she said, what? I said, Fox News. And she said, yeah, and I bet you're a liberal, right? I said, yeah, but I'm a good one. But, and we got along, but what alarmed me was that was what was first and foremost, on her mind. It's like, I don't know if this is exaggerating, but it's like having like little soldiers for this, to me, far right thinking, and they call it conservative, but I think that it's not conservative at all. I think it's very radical, and I think it's very dangerous. And if it compared like 20 or 30 years ago, people's views with how they are today, it happened over a slow period of time, but if you compared the views, it would be shocking. I mean, we're more backward today because of a lot of these notions that they put forward, in their media, than we were 30 years ago. I like science, and evolution. I grew up a Catholic, and I didn't think like evolution conflicted with God. My mom said to me, 7 days could have been 7,000 years. Who knows what a day was in that time? It just, it wasn't a big deal. But now everything is questioned, and I'm just saying that the difference is really striking, and we maybe aren't that aware of it because it happens so slowly over a period of time.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up. Let's go back to Richard Nixon, and if you can, we've got a couple of minutes before the break, but if you can, begin the conversation there, because I learned a great deal while watching The Brainwashing of My Dad, your documentary. It's not just about bashing Fox News. It's not just about this divisiveness that seems to drive the narrative. There's a history lesson here. There's a pattern of behavior. There's a very deliberate money machine at place. I mean, Jen Senko, this is some serious stuff.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, you're right. And it isn't just the media. It was a whole movement, and it started back in the 60s when Goldwater lost, and the Birch Society was around, and they got, I'm simplifying it, they got a bad name because, the rest of the country found them even extreme when they called Eisenhower a communist, and so the whole country was pretty much blue, like liberal, and that's how they voted. And so there was alarm set in by the right, and they just started very slowly building a foundation for a new media and figuring out ways to bring regular people, working people, over to their side of thinking. So Nixon was one of the people who, appealed to working people by learning how to speak their language, using sort of like dog whistle politics, siding with anybody, like any of the hard hats, for instance, that were against protesters of the Vietnam War. There were all these things that he did to get and that Reagan did too, to get working class people to start voting for him, people that felt different, that felt disenfranchised, that felt maybe left out. And so, yeah, that's what I don't know if that's what you were.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, we need to take a very quick break, so stay where you're at. My guest again is Jen Senko. Jen is a very gifted storyteller, filmmaker, documentarian. She has done what is I consider to be an incredibly important film that is the beginning if we'll allow it to be, the start of a new narrative. And this is a movie that you're going to need to share. When we get back, we're going to find out when the final picture will be done, how it will be distributed, how we will be able to see it, where we'll be able to buy it, all that good stuff. In the meantime, go to thebrainwashingofmydad.com. Some great information there. The link to their YouTube channel is there as well, which is well worth spending a little.
Always been fascinated by talk radio. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area listening to talk radio. Talk radio there was just like it was everywhere else, a bunch of white guys on the right railing against the women's movement, the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement. It was racist in that it would talk in code words. It would speak about crime and welfare and illegitimacy. Generally, it would stay in that sort of coded racism zone. When I moved to New York in 1987, I couldn't believe what I heard. I would turn on the radio to WABC, the most listened to talk radio station in the country, and I would hear not coded racism. I'd hear overt gutter racism. And this was coming from different talk show hosts, but the main one was Bob Grant. It just blew my mind that somebody that was this overtly racist and bigoted could be on corporate radio station, the biggest talk show station in the country. I would hear black people referred to as savages. He also said once that he wished the NYPD would take machine guns to a gay parade and, quote, mow them down, close quote. And because Grant had such a huge audience, he was very much sought after by conservative and Republican politicians.
All right, and that is from Jen Senko's documentary, The Brainwashing of My Dad, and just a fascinating look. You know, Jen, first of all, let me thank you for making the commitment to do this, because I'm going to guess that it wasn't always easy, and the discovery was disturbing at some level. You come across as a very kind and compassionate person, and maybe the story you began to tell probably got a little more intense than maybe you were even planning on.
I'm not sure what you mean. You mean with my dad, or what I discovered?
What you discovered along the way. You know, just there's so much here. Again, I've been doing this 22 years, and you taught me a boatload of stuff that I didn't know.
That's really flattering, because you certainly know a lot. But I think that maybe this sounds weird, but I intuit things a lot. And there was, I remember being very aware of the media when I was like 12. I found movies profoundly influential to me and profoundly moving, and I thought about that, and I sort of had that as like a backbone, you know, a thread through my life. So that's how it started. But the more I knew a little bit, like I lived through some of this and I could feel some of this, but the more I read, the more shocked I became about some of these things. And but I did feel at the same time, I did feel like, oh, I'm on the right track. This was my sense, and this is what I see. Before I did the movie, I kind of saw it, like I sort of had a vision of it laid out, just like the skeleton of it. But yeah, you're right. As I started to put the meat on it and go into it more and more, it was quite how shall I say? Yeah, it was startling and disturbing.
Frank Luntz is very well known within both politics and media, and to say that he is a master linguist is putting it lightly. This is a man that really understands how to crawl inside someone's head. He is the master at focus groups, so he really knows how to drive a conversation and how to change the way we dialogue on issues. Let me play a little audio from, again, the documentary, The Brainwashing of My Dad, and let's come back and talk about this, Jen.
When I go in and make a pitch, I learned this about 10 years ago. I have an idea of what I want to sell them, but in the end, I'm listening to what they want to buy. So I'll get the meeting based on some idea, some concoction of, here's how I can help. But within 10 or 15 minutes, I'm listening so carefully that will change, and I will tailor the presentation to what they're looking for. I just don't know it when I walk in the door. So basically, it's asking a ton of questions, listen carefully to the responses, and then being able to tailor a product or a service to what they're looking for most. I've looked at hosts, I've looked at correspondents, and what we found is that they want the toughest question and the surprise from the interviewee. The best way to sell television news, or the best way to sell an anchor, is leaning into some dictator. What is it like to kill 10,000 people? And then you cut to the dictator going, that look of horror, like, oh, here comes a tough question. And they have no answer. They're not interested in the answer. It's not what you say that matters. It's what people hear. It's what people see. It's what people get from the communication. The context by which you present it is all that matters. If I am presented after a great piano player, this person communicates with music, Frank Luntz communicates with words, I look really good. If you position me after Stalin or Hitler, I look really bad. Everything about communication on the theater, on the stage, on television, on movies, is the reaction to what somebody else has said or done. Well, it should be the same in communication.
All right, Jen Senko, that, of course, master linguist Frank Luntz, who is really extraordinarily good at what he does. And in fact, there's a piece of a series of footage in The Brainwashing of My Dad, where we take something like the estate tax, it becomes the death tax. And there are other examples there. Examples that you and I are familiar with. Jen, I can't tell you how many times or how many hours cumulatively I've spent on the radio helping to reposition something like the estate tax in its proper context. But people understand it as the death tax. Even good liberals understand it as the death tax. And getting them off of that has become a great challenge for me as a messenger. It's frustrating, Jen Senko.
Oh, yeah. It's been very frustrating to me all these years to see language being put out there and then Democrats and liberals picking it up. There's a lot of it. I'm drawing a blank. What they call the entitlements.
Yes,
Social Security as an entitlement. It gives people the impression that they're getting something, somebody's getting something for free. But really, why don't liberals and Democrats call it earned income benefits? That was the kind of stuff that frustrated me that I really wanted to point out. And Frank Luntz is a genius at it, and he was kind enough to invite me into his home and go over some of these things. He's got a knack for it. He understands it.
Absolutely. And he is not, Jen, he is not an evil man. He's not a wacko. He's not one of those right-wing wackos. He's a very brilliant guy that understands who butters his bread, and he is committed to his gift, and it is a gift. What he does is a gift. There's no question about it. It's interesting you use the word entitlement, because really, and I've had this conversation on the air with dozens, if not hundreds of people, If I were to ask you, Jen, what is an entitlement? Something you are entitled to, correct?
Right.
All right. So why is that negative? You're entitled to it for a reason. Why? Well, you said it, because you've earned it.
Right.
But
well,
somehow we can
take a bad word.
Right, and it's not. But you're right. It did become a bad word. And once I walk people through just a very simple paragraph, what is entitlement? Something you're entitled to. And how do you get it? You earn it. So why is that bad? Oh, I don't know.
Right. And no, it became a bad word. The way it was said, the things implied around it, like these poor people, who think they have these entitlements, it was given a bad word, so we have to change it. George Lakoff is really very brilliant at coming up with alternative language, and he's written a couple of books, like Don't Think of an Elephant, a book for progressives, where he suggests some alternative language. Yeah, it's funny, the thing that happened with entitlement, and it's funny that death tax got caught on. Also, tax relief caught on. Bush used it. President Bush used it, and relief implies some sort of relief from something bad, and the Democrats pick it right up and start saying it, and then it becomes. Language, I guess the big thing that both George Lakoff and Frank Luntz would agree is that language matters. It matters a lot.
Oh, there's no question. Jen, I've shared this story with my audience, not often, but about 20 years ago or so, I was approached by a company out of Kansas City to do a nationally syndicated show. And I was doing a nationally syndicated morning show at the time. But they asked me, and at the time I was just doing general topic radio. I was not doing political radio in any way, shape, or form. And I was asked to come on board, was offered a very handsome salary to become a vitriolic, flame-throwing, right-wing wacko. And it took me all of about that long to say no. Now, there have been times in my life where I've said, gee, what could I have today had I have said yes to that offer? But I've let that go. The point of my bringing that up, Jen, is that there was a plan in place. There was money in place. There were organizations and businesses that made a decision, not unlike what they did with the American Legislative Exchange Council, understanding the long-term impact of what they were doing to change the dialogue. You speak about in the film, The Brainwashing of My Dad, about what happened at the collegiate level, what happened with professors, what happened with op-eds, etc. There was a well-designed plan, and it was a long-term plan. And that's the one brilliant part of the right-wing spin machine, is they understood that the investment up front would not reap them a return. They understood that, and they were willing to invest in it, knowing that they would ultimately get what they want. As an example, last week's quote-unquote presidential debate on Fox News was the most watched cable news program in the history of Fox News. And it wasn't even a debate, Jen.
Right.
Man, you stop and think about that. How much money did Fox News make last Thursday? Can't even imagine, but it was millions of dollars. Listen, there was a plan in place. They executed it brilliantly. The point of my bringing all this up is, at some point as a consumer, Jen, we have to take responsibility for the popularity of the Rush Limbaughs or the popularity of the Michael Savages, the Glenn Becks, the Bill O'Reillys, the Megyn Kellys, etc. As consumers of news, we have to take some responsibility for that. At the same time, people need to have more confidence. You would use the word intuition. You said, well, I don't know if this is appropriate. That was more than appropriate. And I'll tell you why. You took what you inherently knew and what you intuitively knew was the right thing for you to do. And whether you were afraid or not, you had the courage and the vision to move forward with this documentary. You're unafraid to speak truth to power. And Jen, there's some magic in that. There really is some magic in that. And I think that that's gifted from God. I truly do believe that. And I don't know if you're a spiritual person. Many of us lapsed Catholics kind of walk away from religion once we walk away from our Catholicism. I found a spiritual center. But at the end of the day, I think that what you've done has, again, provided an opportunity to change the narrative. And if we'll pay attention to this really wonderful movie, and I saw it in its imperfect form, and it was still fabulous after 3 times watching it.
Oh, my goodness.
The Brainwashing of My Dad is real. I love the title. I love the content. I love the vision. I love the potential. So tell us, when will it be done? Where will we be able to see it? Will we be able to buy it? Give us some updates, if you would, please.
Okay, first of all, thank you for saying what you did. And yes, I am somewhat spiritual. I prayed before this, that I would say the right things and, be able to express myself well, because I'm a little on the shy side. But, okay, so the documentary is, that was a rough cut, and we are working right now on the final cut. I'd say the only slight criticism we had was that it was a bit dense. So we're going to try and not take away any information, but maybe take away some parts where it's repetitive. And we're working on that. We're trying to raise money for the editing and then for promotion. So, but in the meantime,
do you still have a Kickstarter campaign? I'm sorry. Do you still have a Kickstarter campaign up?
Oh no, that ended. But I do have a 501c3.
Would you be so kind as to email me the link to that so that I can help you raise some money for this?
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Yeah, I will. Just give me I don't think I have your email, but so yeah, if you give me your email, I would love to do that. People can also go on the website and sign up. It's a button called Join the Movement. And what I do is I'll send out, I don't do it often, I send out notices like, okay, we're going to be, for instance, we're going to be doing film festivals with the rough cut this fall. So if somebody is in, like, say, the D.C. area or the Dallas area, they can go and see it. And then we hope to have a completely finished cut. We're aiming for Sundance. I hope we have, I hope we get in, and we hope we will have a finished cut by then. And then eventually we would really like to do theatrical. This has been in my mind the whole time to have it be theatrical. I do feel that there's an audience for it because people are hungry for this. They want. It's like a friend saying, "Yes, that happened to me too." And then it'll eventually be available to download. And the sooner we can do it, the better. I know, but unfortunately, these things take time. But also on the website, there's a link to PayPal, and there's some instructions if people, do want to help out and donate.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, as you were talking, I went to the website. Underneath support, there is an entire page of how people can donate. I'm going to, I'll just use that as my link. So don't worry about having to email me. I will take care of that. There are many levels, including $25, $75, $100, $250, $350, $500, $1,000 or more. And there are lots of ways to do it, including how to do it as a tax deduction through Women Make Movies. I will make sure all of this gets put up, Jen. I want to see this movie distributed. I want to see this movie become the jumping off point for an entire new narrative on how we really empower people. Listen, I'm not asking people to believe what I say. And I say this almost on a daily basis, Jen Senko. Mm-hmm. Challenge me. I mean, challenge me. If I say something and you think I'm dead wrong, challenge me. And then if you write it on a piece of paper and I'm wrong, I'll eat that piece of paper. The bottom line is I've never eaten paper in my life. And there's a reason for that. I take what I do very seriously. I believe, as you obviously do as well, Jen Senko, that what you are doing is the truth. And in that truth is an empowerment, is a discovery, is an opportunity. Whether you decide to take that or not is completely up to you. And you and I both know that there are plenty of people in denial of the truth. And I get that. And I feel sorry for those people. I pray for those people, because ultimately, as difficult as the truth can be, and believe me, I have been profoundly disappointed by the truth many, many times in my life. I'd rather not be lied to and deal with the reality than to be lied to and fight the lie, because ultimately, I just want to know. I just want to know the truth. And I can't believe that what you have done for us in the brainwashing of my dad, what you have done for us, what a gift that is, again, what a vision that is. And I'm not just saying this to blow smoke up your ass, Jen. I'm really not. I believe that this documentary can change the narrative of how we move forward. And I want everybody to experience that, whether they agree with it or not.
Well, that's what I hope for too. That's what I hope for too. I really hope that it can change the narrative.
I think it will change the narrative. We've only got a couple minutes left. Let me give you an opportunity to wrap it up. Whatever you want to say, sell it. I don't care what you want to do. The brainwashing of my dad is a profound story. I am not going to give away the ending, but ladies and gentlemen, the ending alone, I hope you didn't change that too much. No. The ending alone, and your mom's such a sweetheart. I just wanted to give her a big hug. But the ending alone, yeah, absolutely. She's such a sweetheart. And I bet you she's a great cook too, isn't she?
She is. How'd you get that?
Because there's something about the way she carries herself. And I mean that in the best possible way. She cares about everything she does, no matter how small it is. I know that. I'm a cook. So right. I'm a cook. So I get that. And everything your mother does is about expressing love. Everything she does is about expressing love. Tough love even, but that's what it's about. I get her. I really do get her. Anyway, let me give you the rest of our time to wrap things up, Senko.
Well, I've done a couple different films before. The first film I did was called Roadmap Warrior Women. And I was so surprised when that won a couple of film festival awards, and that was about really independent women out west and me finding my own independence through that journey. And then I did a couple other short narrative films, and then Fiore DeRosa and I directed a film called The Vanishing City, which is about the luxurification of New York specifically, but also cities around the world. What's happening? How they're squeezing out middle class people, and they're just becoming a place for the uber rich. And then this project is something that I've been waiting the last probably 15 years to do, and it means everything to me. I have sacrificed a lot. I don't have a job. I'm not a spring chicken, and here I am. I have a roommate at my age. But I will die happy if, once I get this documentary. I mean, I'm not planning on it, but I'm just saying I will feel like I did what I was supposed to do and wanted to do.
Well, you have.
Sound funny.
No, you have. And I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview. You had no idea who I was. You had no idea, especially when I asked for an hour. You didn't say no, and many people do. Obviously, I needed the hour because there was a lot I wanted to say. Jen Senko, you and I will be visiting again. It will be because of this movie. And I believe that at some level, this, again, is going to change the narrative in the best possible way. And I want to thank you again for your courage and blind faith in moving forward. You will be rewarded for this. I assure you that's true.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony. That's very kind of you. And it's very encouraging, too. I'm going to go forward with my day today, feeling empowered.
Well, you should, because you've empowered me, and I can't thank you enough. We are out of time. Jen Senko, again, the link to the website is up on both the Facebook pages, and I tweeted it out at the top of the interview, which was an hour ago. In the meantime, after the show, I will place a link to how you can donate anywhere from $5. Jen doesn't care. Or whatever you feel comfortable doing. But imagine having the ability to say you were part of something that changed the way the media interacts with us in a positive way. Jen, thanks so much for being